Howdy, howdy. Happy Friday.
Hey
Hey,
guys, how you doing?
Good. So we are continuing our 60 days of Halloween. We've got 35 days left, and we will be announcing new specials every week. We've been sending out a newsletter, so pay extra special attention this Friday if you are a Blade Runner fan. We've got something incredibly special for you this week. So, what do you got for us today, Rye? You kept telling us that you had something special.
Yeah, I know you guys don't always like to talk about this, but I'm getting more and more of it lately. So let's talk about licensing today. So watch the life drains out of Jared instantly. He's, he just turned two different shades. Yeah, let's talk about licensing. So remember, sometimes we talk about how we do the things we do. Sometimes we talk about what goes into what we're making. Sometimes we talk about nothing at all. Um, But licensing, and again, I get it. We're jaded. We deal with this every day, but it's good to remind ourselves every once in a while that some people, the five or six who watch these, do find this sort of thing interesting. So we need to share when we can. So licensing. What brought this up is I've got some friends in the area. You know, a couple of these guys, Amy. Like Randy or Tony. You know those dudes.
What's up, man?
And yeah, they're probably not watching,
No.
but they have no idea we do these. But I don't even think they know what I do, and that's rather the point here. So every once in a while, like Randy in particular, he'll throw some things at me. Hey, you need to make such and such, and you should do so and so, and why don't you make this, and why don't you do that? And I get these questions on the forums a lot. Um, and we've spoken to it before. I think sometimes when people like, let's use Warner Brothers, Universal, whomever that we partnered with, as an example. I think some people think sometimes they just, hey, you need to make such and such. They don't have any concept whatsoever that you have to have a relationship with a given studio, an IP owner, and so forth to even get to that. But Randy's become a little more dialed in. He at least pays attention to what studio makes whatever film he likes, and he's like, you need to make such and such. So let's take it back to the beginning. I mean, a lot of people. I was going to go down the road of, you get this question a lot, Amy. We were talking about this the other day. A lot of people just, hey, how do you start a prop company? Well, I'll bite my tongue. So should you start a prop company? No, you really shouldn't. But if you, it's one of those things. Jared, you and I talked about this. How would we go down that road? Well, I opened up the can now, so let's start there. If you were going to start a prop company, what's the first thing you do? Well, you,
Gotta get
I, I
studio
feel
license.
I feel a lot of edits. I feel a lot of edits coming along in this video. If you're going to start a prop company, first you got to be able to you got to be in a position to spend a lot of cash on licenses. So maybe that's a good place to start. Just what kind of money are you talking about? Well, without getting into specifics, it's easy to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars with a given studio. It's just easy. You can go to other studios and say, hey, I just want this one thing. We'll use Sony as a good example. If you want to make any one thing from Sony, that one thing's going to cost you $25,000. Just that one thing, that one relationship. There's no, hey, I want to add this and I want to add this property. Each one of those, a genie bottle. Here's a good example of the dynamics. So we'll use the genie bottle from I Dream of Genie as an example. So Sony owns I Dream of Genie, and at one point I went to Sony, and as you recall, Amy, Jared, you were off on a different adventure at the time. Um, but I'd gone to Sony and I said, hey, we want to make the I Dream of Genie bottles. We want to do season one, season two, and so forth. And they're like, great, that'll be $25,000. And then I'm like, okay, but I'm noticing this person online and this person online. They were like, do you remember, Amy? There were like 8 damn people selling Genie bottles. And all of them had really hot descriptions on their websites that implied they were licensed, but of course they weren't. And remember when I was pointing it out to our friend at Sony, and she said, "Yeah, we're not going to do anything about that. We're not. and you'll charge us 25K, but you're not going to do anything about the people who are literally selling them for free. Um, that's not always the case with studios, but sometimes there's rights like with Barbara Eden, her likeness and that sort of thing that they don't control. And also, that's a case of a found item. That genie bottle was a what was that, Jared? It was a Jim Beam Christmas decanter, like a 1964 Jim Beam
Yeah,
Christmas.
it had a
That they,
similar story or background as the Romulan ale, or
yeah, I know where you're going. Right. So that's a case of, hey, it's a found item, but you're using "I Dream of Jeannie." But so the answer on an item like that would be sure, you can license it with a studio for 25K, and then you can fight it out with all the other guys who, the milk was free. Why buy the cow and all that? They didn't have to do that.
yeah,
So there was no way for us to compete against that. So that's an example of a license we took a pass on. Now we could just as easily have purchased what's another Sony property we thought about?
Ghostbusters.
Ghostbusters.
Ghostbusters,
We
great
haven't
example.
thought about it, but that's like one of their premier licenses.
Well, at one point before the last film, not Frozen, but the first one of the reboot,
Afterlife.
we talked about Afterlife. We talked about licensing up for Afterlife. It just felt like Matty Collector had got it done. I mean, we
Yeah,
knew there was going to be different pieces from Afterlife that we could have done, and we could have hit them on the higher end spectrum of prop replicas. But it just felt like it had been done. It just felt like that ground had been covered. So that's an example of, is it worth us spending the 25K, having the new relationship with a new studio, and then having to tool up and hundreds of thousands of dollars in tooling and everything else for something where again, most of that stuff had been done, and well, Matty Collector hit a nice groove there on a lot of that stuff, and then Novos and some of those guys had done the higher end packs and that sort of stuff, and the ones that made it out. So there just didn't seem like there was a lot of room for us to do anything there. So that's
yeah,
a good example of just how you might pursue one property. Now you could go to another studio like use WB Warner Brothers as an example. It, it's funny. Uh, I have people ask this from time to time. Like I think about let's say my next door neighbor, if he just got the Jones, he knows nothing about props, nothing about licensing, but he just decides, hey, he wants to try to make the end all be all Ruby slippers replica. He doesn't know we've already done it or anything like that. He goes to WB. Even that, as I think about it, is a Herculean effort, right? The average guy off the street, how do they get? I mean, we take it for granted that we know who to call and how to reach out to people. But the average person off the street, they're not going to get that information off a website. They're not going to be able to glean it. I mean, it's going to be a challenge. I get, a lot of people will hire liaisons to shepherd their relationship to a studio because it's so difficult to hit that one person who can, stroke your deal, for the property. So, yeah, using the neighbor as an example again, let's say they want to do Ruby slippers. They'd go to WB, and if the category is open, WB will charge them about, it could be as much as 150K. Now, if you're smart, you'll try to build a package around that, right? Instead of just buying the one property, and you're like, well, how much stuff can I add to this? And then that's like when we stroke, our deal. We didn't just do Lost Boys and Wizard of Oz. We went into Lost Boys, Wizard of Oz, Batman, the Goonies, and so forth. You build out a package, and that speaks to what I was saying about Randy at the front end, where he'll see a movie like from WB, and well, you should make that. Well, it's a whole nother ballgame outside of your initial plan that you sign your deal on to add strays. Other companies may be making stuff from those properties. Um, uh, for whatever reason, maybe the studio doesn't want to license it. This is a good example to talk about the stuff you want to do that you don't always get to do. So, like with WB, we desperately wanted to do props from Superman.
Mhm.
And we wanted to do the kryptonite necklace. We wanted to do the shards. There was so much stuff we wanted to do from Christopher Reeve's Superman, and they just weren't into it. For 2 years they weren't into it, and then we finally got that call. Well, we might open up that category. Is a popular, a category as popular as Superman, they just weren't giving it really any attention, and that can be perplexing to a company like us. We're
There
like,
could
wow,
be, not saying it's specific to that one, but there can be underlying legal issues that we may not be aware of.
absolutely,
That just
absolutely.
prevents them from ever opening up that discussion. Like original Blade Runner, 1982 Blade Runner,
Mhm.
there are a myriad of legal issues around the merchandising around that pretty much prevent it from ever being licensed. I'm not saying never, but
Well, you
you're
shouldn't
not gonna
say
license
never, because that thing. I negotiated our Blade Runner deal, and yeah, it was tricky.
it.
But
Yeah,
you start talking about that whole other thing of, I mean, we're Blade Runner 2049, and
that's the
that's a whole
difference.
different,
Yeah,
yeah, a whole
Blade Runner
different crew.
2049 is good. Blade Runner 82, that's a
Yeah,
tricky.
there's weird stuff happening there, and
Yeah,
people. I mean, there's a lot of urban legend and weirdness assigned to that. So yeah, we should probably not talk about that one, because there's a big hole that we could end up having to edit there. So we love Blade Runner 2049. We
yes,
we love our partners with that. We're speaking to some of that mess around, again, like Jared
the
said,
original.
80 Blade Runner. But that's still a good example of, you can't just go buy something. Uh, all this stuff, a lot of people act as though you throw money at it and you magically get it. You just can't. Some things you just can't buy, and that would be an interesting
It should be
example.
noted. It should be noted too, like with the Sony properties you mentioned, you're 25K in just to get in anything that they own, but there are limitations. Even if you pay that 25K, you may not get all the rights and categories you assume you would. There's likeness rights. They might even say like you can have this license, but you can't do any of this stuff, and it's all the stuff you want to do. It's like, well,
Yeah, you
what am I
can't
doing?
use this. You can't use this voice. You
Yeah,
can't use this likeness.
yeah, yeah.
And like you said, we've done that. Remember, well, let's just keep using Sony as an example, because we love them over there, but we're probably not going to license anything with them anytime soon. So there's nobody to piss off. So let's just talk about them. Um, Sony's a real good example. Well, here you go, Amy. I know. I mean, fuck it.
I'm
So,
yeah. I
I
just
mean,
I just laughed at the way that you said it of just, you know what? Let's do this.
yeah, it's a good example. I mean, we love them. We've got our friend over there, and we probably will do something with them sooner or later. But she knows, not that she's ever going to watch this thing, as she's like watching it right now, making notes like, all right, X, not them. We won't do anything with them.
But
Uh,
it's nothing personal with them. It's like
it's funny. She
they're
doesn't.
just navigating the language of the contract. It's not like they don't
Right,
like you and they don't want to give you those things.
right,
That's just the
right.
reality of the contract.
I mean, exactly. They don't take it personal. But as we go to License Expo next year, and like, hey, Amy, did you set that appointment up over at Sony? Oddly, they haven't returned my call. but but no, it's a real good example. So when we look at like their properties, remember when we were looking over their list? It wasn't 9 months ago, and everything we wanted is X'd out,
Yeah, yeah.
or you can't use this, you can't use that. And to Jared's point, it was like, why would we want this then? And and that happens a lot. So often is the case. But back it up to Superman real quick. There were no. Our rep at the time had said, they viewed that as a heritage act. Just a heritage. Well, heritage art. That's what it's what we deal in is nostalgia. That's everything else is arguably heritage. But they kind of like, what was another Logan's Run. They didn't want us to do anything with Logan's Run. They just didn't want to put the effort into it, and that would be their legal team. When we say they don't want to put their effort into it, usually legal is, they're like, we don't want to do this, we don't want to do that. Sometimes it's like what Jared said. There's something in the way. There's an estate or something guarding
I
the
can
gate.
tell you stories. Not this isn't a Sony property, but there was another property where we had inquired about it, in a past life, and they said to our face like, that is not worth our time to put our lawyers on it to draft a contract. we,
Yeah,
we
yeah.
just don't want to bother with that. So
that is in essence what we were told about a couple properties over at WB. I mean, you know, along those lines, that was the gist of it.
Mhm.
But then when they came around and said, well, maybe, well, we, that ship had sailed. But
Yeah.
anyway, it just speaks to where a lot of people think, hey, just because you have a relationship with one studio, that doesn't mean you get to do everything under their roof. And then, even if you get the initial thumbs up when you're designing what's called a line plan, and we've talked about this in other videos. Essentially, when you approach a studio, you'll tell them the films you want to work with, the properties that you want to farm things from, and then you'll kind of lay out a plan. This is what I want to do in year one. This is what I want to do in year two. We might make X number of these, and it'll look like this. And they kind of give you a check along the way because, like Jared was saying, you don't want to buy all this shit and then they're like, no, you can't do that, you can't do that, and you can't do that, and before you know it, you have a problem. And we've run into that before. We've had properties that we were
Mm.
licensed to do things from, and we get a few items in, and then we point out, well, we want to do this and we want to do that, and they're like, you can't do that. And we're like, why? You let us do this. Why can't we make that? Well, we don't know if we have the rights to that. Well, sure you do. It's in the movie. It's in the TV show. And then we end up with that back and forth. So sometimes it's frustrating. And, I'll go ahead and loud that out. That was just because I'm in that mood. So Supernatural, we did as everybody's like, oh, shit, here he goes.
No,
Here he
that's
goes.
exactly what I was thinking when you
Mhm.
mentioned that. That was
Well,
that's the
and I
example.
knew you were, and I was like, you know what? Well, it's just it's a good example.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is. So we did after we did the first blade, and after we did Ruby's knife, we wanted to get into the rings. Remember, we wanted to do the four horse, the apocalypse rings,
Yeah. The
and
tablet too. The God
we wanted
tablet.
to do we wanted to do the God tablet, and we were starting to run up against things like, oh, well, we don't know if you could do that. Where are you going to get your reference? We own one of the originals, because we've all got collections. And Tom actually owned multiple screen used rings that we were going to reference. He's got the bunker key. Remember, we wanted to do the bunker key and all
I
that?
loved the bunker key. I'm still so sad that we were not able to make that. And it
Jared, did you ever see that? We had the original bunker key.
I
It
don't think
came in
I saw it.
a little
No.
secret cool box and everything. Yeah, we wanted to do that. What we were running up against was just odd things like, why are you calling this a demon killing knife? Because they
That's
call it that in the TV show.
what it is.
Uh, and I mean, sometimes there's a little bit of wrestling that goes into what we do. Sometimes whoever you're working with might not know the property as well as we do, and we ran into that a few times where we were wanting to make things that they were right there, they were ready to go, and they're like, "Well, why do you want to do that?" Because it's in the show, and so that can be frustrating. So I only speak to that because sometimes they're the things you want to do. There's the things you should be able to do. They're the things that are in your line plan, and you still don't get to do it. So sometimes you just run into some weird frustration. Sometimes a prop you could want to do, and it depends on the political climate. You might want to do something that is, a modular back grapnel. Don't call that a gun. Don't you call that a no?
Yeah.
It's a modular grapnel. Even though the vernacular, within the hobby is, it's back grapnel. It's a spear gun. Um, it's not even a real gun. It's a spear gun, a grapple gun. But then it becomes no. It's technically a grapnel, and it's a modular grapnel unit, because to call it anything else would have made that piece have to be attached to a base like a statue. So those are some of the trials and tribulations we deal with licensing. We might have a vision of, we want this museum quality badass metal prop replica, as it ultimately ended up, um, and you've got to hit a certain price point so it can't be confused as a toy. And most of the time that works out for us anyway, because the stuff we do is complex and expensive for us to make anyway. So we hit those higher price points, and it can be challenging. There's any number of things that can stop us from doing what we want to do in licensing. So how's that so far, guys? How's that? That's a good place to start, right?
No, it's
So
a good behind the scenes.
well, it speaks to Again, that popular question, how do I, just like a musician, how do I, you might ask your favorite musician if you get the opportunity, how did you become a professional drummer? How did you become a pro guitarist? Most of the time it's a lot of talent meets a little bit of luck and opportunity. And this is similar. You get a good group of like-minded people together, a team that has a passion for like what we're doing. Let's face it. I joked about this the other day. For the money that's in Paragon so far, man, we could have done a Chick-fil-A franchise. we could have we could open a Burger King. We could have done remember, I keep talking about the indoor parachuting facility. Remember, I'm at the beach. I'm at a giant tourism destination. There's so many other things that money could go into. So, I mean, if you want to spend a gazillion dollars and get into that, it's not just the prop replica space. Maybe you've got a passion for action figures. You're like, hey, I want to do action figures like this company or that company. Statues, man, I was watching videos last night just on all the new statues that are coming out and some of the companies that do that. Again, if you have a passion for it, it's good. That's why you do it. I mean, I'm not suggesting you work and live off love and passion, but it is a good bit of it. I mean, you there's no such thing as, and this is another good thing about licensing and manufacturing. Uh, I get a lot of it when like guys will come into the office, like the Orkin guy, or somebody who's just doing some work on the building, or somebody from the city who comes in to inspect something, whatever, and they see some of this stuff. Sometimes they'll just, hey, what's that cost? Hey, that's cool. What do you sell that for? They're just curious. And then sometimes the follow up is, what'd you make it for? And you know what they're thinking? They're always thinking, because you hear that, well, I bet you made that for pennies, or I bet that was $25, in Asia or whatever. Most of this stuff is just incredibly expensive. I mean, stuff like the Hero Blade Runner guns, the cryo cans, the machined metal, all those type things we work in, they're incredibly expensive. So you got your licensing, you have your tooling, you've got your manufacturing. Let's not forget when you're getting dinged with 7%, when it comes in, tariffs, when it comes into the country, depending on where you're manufacturing from. And then, oh, if you get help, I mean, there's so much stuff that can happen. And this is before it's ever hit the warehouse. Then each and every one of us gets paid. Meanwhile, you're paying royalties to the studio. So there's your next part. After you've bought your license, and well, then you got to figure out how to make everything. So there's hopefully you already know how to do that. So you buy your license, you figure out how to make all your stuff. You've already got your pipeline, how you're going to distribute and offer direct to customer, all of that. But then you've got your royalties. So it's not like you just pay the studio and then you're done. No, for as long as you have a relationship with them, you are paying them a percentage of your sales direct to customer and otherwise. Uh, it's expensive. You got to want it. So this was part of a larger conversation. Like I was telling you guys, Tom was going to be on this call because we spent a lot of time talking about this. We joke about it a lot, that to want to do this, to operate in this space, to have especially like us dealing strictly in prop replicas, we essentially sell nostalgia, we sell memories, smiles for a living. That's what we do, and you honestly have to have a passion for that. You got to want it. I mean, how often do we talk about? I mean, you just get to the end, like especially when we're on a design grind. And Amy, you're doing a lot of the behind the scenes stuff with newsletters, or setting up the quarterlies, or dealing with the taxes from state to state, all those things that happen. And then Jared and I are grinding on a project, and then like at 6 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm like, man, I'm wiped. I'm beat. Don't call me this afternoon. I am done. And that's kind of where we are now. We're grinding on new licenses, lots of new products, stuff we haven't talked about yet. And I'm at my absolute happiest when I'm building. Like I told you yesterday, Amy. I mean, if I can go into the shop, cut the radio on, pull out all the tools, make a mess, and just sit there and prototype, and then blow Jared up. Look at this. Does this look scaled? What do you think of this? I think this looks like that. I mean, just before we even got on this, Jared and I were going back and forth about a particular texture on a piece of copper.
Yeah.
And Jared's like, no, I see this. And I'm like, I think you're high. I see this. And we're just back and forth and back and forth. And then speaking to that passion again. So like everything, like Toho Studios, so Godzilla, great example. We've been talking about that lately. We're working on all things Godzilla right now. Now we've got all the reference we need for any number of props, but there's a couple little nagging things about textures and final finishes. And hey, is this a Phillips head screw? Is slot head? Whatever. And the only way these questions get answered, because there's a bit of a communication gap between us and Japan, um, and a lot of this stuff is just nobody's made these things before, so nobody can speak to them from a technical end like we need them to do. So the only way to answer these questions is to go to Tokyo. So Jared and I will be headed to Tokyo here in the next couple months, probably before the end of the year, with the sole purpose of just physically laying hands on these things. Not it's not a best guess. That's not good enough. I mean, there's a reason why a lot of the things we're going to be making, like the oxygen destroyer, there's a reason why that's not been offered on a commercial level before. It's because it's hard, one, and two, you have to be nuts to want to make it. You just do, and that speaks to, I want one in my collection. All of us want one in their collection. Tom absolutely adores Godzilla, so we take that seriously, and we know how passionate collectors are about these pieces. So we will dig in and travel, and it's expensive. So it's just a good example of, again, in answering that question, what's it take to run a prop company? Uh, sure, cash is okay. You got to spend some money. It's going to be expensive, but that that's the easy part. I mean,
Yeah.
ultimately, that's the easy part.
You'll burn through money faster than you think you will
Yeah,
if
yeah.
if you're not savvy enough to navigate the licensing, manufacturing, not to mention the e-commerce portion of it, the sales, the strategies that go around it. There's a lot of areas to cover.
Well, there are, and we've talked about the whole business model of, as far as when somebody licenses up and sells props. I mean, right now you see it. The model has always been, company announces prop whatever. They tell you it's coming sometimes, when it's coming, and then sometimes just say, hey, it's coming. Order it now. Get it now. So you queue up, you buy it, and you wait for a year or two, or sometimes never. And that's the way it is. And then that company will take that money and they will roll it into the next prop, and then so on. It's like a built-in, self-imposed Ponzi scheme. One prop pays for the next, hopefully, which pays for the next, hopefully. But if this is a bad sell and this is a bad sell, and then whatever the company's is always pointing to the fences like, hey, here comes a home run. This one's the home run. This is the one that takes care of this and this and this. That's where companies get into trouble. And we've seen that. So the one good thing that's always been solid with us is we just agreed up front, hey, if we mention it, we're making it regardless. It's getting done. So we always say, of course we want everybody to buy whatever it is we're doing. We want people to join the interest list to be ready for the purchase. But I don't think what a lot of people realize is we don't sit back and count heads or hands in the air and go, okay, we have 200 people who love this idea, so we're going to make 350 of these. We never do that. We have a long talk internally, and we go, well, let's make, I mean, use Mr. DNA as an example. That was simple. We looked at how many cryo cans, were popular out of the gate, how many Hammond canes, park maps. You could kind of do it's a little, you got to have a little prop mojo. Hopefully, my formula always is, if I like it, I presume everybody else will. And then I operated as a private builder for so many years. I think I've got a good feel for what people like, and hopefully I don't pick too many chodes along the way. But essentially, you have a certain barometer, right, for what you think the fan base for any given property would like, and then you guess. You guess. I mean, you almost wet your finger and stick it in the air, check for which way the wind's blowing, and then say, I
It's an
think we should
educated
make
guess.
700 of these. Yes, uh, the definition of a hypothesis is an educated guess. So you take what you know and what you've seen sell before, and you guess, because you don't want to live with this stuff. You don't want to be using this stuff as door stops or kindling, and you can't fire 20 years from now or whatever. So that's just kind of a little peek at what goes in, I guess. I didn't mean to make such a goulash of this conversation, this topic, but I guess that's really the only way to do it, is kind of schizophrenically jump from one facet of it to the next. And again, you start with the price, you start with the licensing, and man, we could burn up all kind of time just talking about personalities. That you might have a relationship with a studio on paper, but man, you need to be able to get along with the people you talk to every day, and hopefully they're of like mind and vision. And I think now, just with us, we've reached that groove. Paragon's been doing this. I think we took our first sell about two and a half
March,
years ago.
March of 2022.
Okay, so we're barely a few years into getting this thing done. And that's the other thing. Wait for a natural disaster. Lord God, wait for a pandemic before you start your replica company. There's some good advice. Start it right in the middle of the worst possible time ever, like we did when shipping containers cost $15,000 each. And yeah, I'm being kind. I'm being kind.
You're
For
being
a time.
very kind.
Yeah, I'm being very kind. But it was just the worst, most god awful time ever. So again, it speaks to passion. And I don't mention this to pat ourselves on the back and say, "Oh, we love this stuff so much. How this is why you
But
should
that,
get these things." No, I'm sincerely just conveying the point that sure, you throw money at a license, you get it. Then what are you going to do? You've really got to have some passion to carry it across the finish line, unless you're going to be that guy who says this is close enough. Here's your COA, and but I don't think you get to go. You don't make it for the long haul. You don't build up a dedicated group of collectors who are looking forward to your next item, and that's what we want to do. I mean, we want to have, you know, I want the guy who never thought about collecting props, but maybe he just loved Creep Show and he got that monkey paw and he's like, well, shit, I love this monkey paw. What else do these guys do? And before you know it, it's like a new collector is born. Somebody has a passion for this thing that we do, which sometimes feels like a full contact sport. It can be so competitive and difficult to land stuff. I mean, Jared, you said it best a long time ago. Just so everybody knows, Jared has a real passion for action figures and that sort of thing. So that day you and I were talking, and it's kind of like that. It's that simplistic thought that out of the mouth of babes, just, man, props are hard. When we were just having that talk that day, and you're like, man, props are so hard.
yeah,
It's hard enough just to get in a position to make them, but then to see it through to fruition. There's so many things that get in the way. There's the factory that tells you no problem, and then 6 months later, yeah,
problem.
there's a problem. And then you're like, well, I only got a year and a half left on my license. You're telling me
Yeah,
it's going to take another 6. And that's the other thing.
young and
Licenses have
time.
fuses on them. They have time. So, and all these really difficult pieces to make, man, it burns up a lot of time in production. You could be a year into a license before you've landed your first item, and you're already trying to renegotiate your next license.
Yep.
And it's just so difficult. Do you guys have any thought? Like, Amy, what's some of the stuff that, I mean, it doesn't have to vex you. I mean, it doesn't have to be difficult, but what's, I mean, you can just easily say, what is it that you love about the licensing? I know Amy, just so everybody knows, Amy is particularly sociable, and
I'm
I'm
definitely an
probably,
extrovert.
yeah, and I am. I don't think I've ever met a stranger, but um, Amy really gets along well in one-on-one settings on licensing. All of our partners love Amy, and Jared and I are like, everybody loves Amy. I must just. What is it about me? Why don't they love me that much? And am I prickly? Am I, whatever? I am in there from a different point of view. I'm trying to overcome obstacles. And hey, are you guys cool with this? Are you cool with that? And there's not always smiles. Whereas like Amy's doing right now, Amy's always nodding yes. She's always yeah, 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 yeah. And but that speaks to personalities. and just every single bit of it is so important. But what's some of the stuff you like? What's some of the stuff that you find particularly difficult, Amy, with regard to licensing?
Uh,
Maybe on the
Goodness.
spot.
Yeah,
I've
there you
seen
go.
catch my breath. I've been
I mean, I because I am the person that is communicating a lot with a lot of our licensors, I do like the personal connection that we do end up having with our teams.
right.
Um, I because of needing to go through the minute details, that's mostly what I am, having to perform. It does get a little it not frustrating necessarily, but when I like, for example, we started out not having more than, US in our universal license. And
Yeah.
we had a company reach out from Japan that wanted to buy our Jurassic Park stuff.
Yeah.
They also were a licensee in Japan. And so it seemed like, oh yeah, we're Jurassic Park, you're Jurassic Park. This should be very easy to just deal with. And it's not necessarily always that easy. Certain licenses spell out exactly how you sell direct to other companies. I do build out our distribution network. So a lot of the times I'm talking to our retail partners, and it's amazing to me sometimes when you do have something as simple as, well, we have rights to make this stuff and they want to buy it and they have rights to sell this stuff. So can we not just all be happy and smile and have a great time enjoying these products? And it we recently had a new license and they were so kind to spell out, "Hi, in your business to business dealings, this is how we want you to do
Yeah.
this. Da,
Yeah.
da, 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 da." And I literally just had a little joyous moment in my own heart when I was reading that license for the first time. It was like, "Yay, thank you guys for just taking," it was what, 4, 5 weeks of back and forth when we were just wanting to sell to this company in Japan, and we
Right.
did end up being able to do that, but it went to legal and had to go through this whole legal process to be able to let us do that. And so when we got that new license and there was this whole clause in there, "Hey, this is how you work with this." Oh, thank you guys. Thank you. I wish everybody would do that.
Yeah.
But, it's the little minute things when, I get the territory question all the time, but, it's not just as simple as, yes, you get to make these things and
Right.
yes, you get to sell them. You do have to pay attention to all the details in those giant legal documents. And it's fun while also being frustrating sometimes. But, it's a part of the puzzle and it's a part of what we do.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. I'm watching the clock because we're at 38 minutes now. So let's try to wrap this up under 45, so this will actually work on
Oh,
Instagram. Yeah, we'll see if it does. But the other thing, and we've spoken to this a bunch of times, but again, nobody watches these, so we just one or two people at a time catch this part about territories. I noticed on inevitably and people get mad, mean face, horns, red face,
angry.
you know, why don't you guys sell to so and so? I'd buy this if you sold here. Too bad for you. As though we somehow personally don't want to sell to a given country or whatever. Again, it's never that, guys. When you get one of these deals, one of these licenses, you are assigned territories. There's simply where you can and can't sell. It's as simple as that. We negotiate as I always say, we would blanket the earth with everything we do if we could, but we are limited to certain territories because we have counterparts in Europe or Asia or wherever, and the studio gets to sell them a license and them a license and so on. So um, that's why you have territories, and we operate within whatever boundaries and guidelines they set up. And then the only other thing is, I guess, if we just want to wrap up, what that behind the scenes thing again with licensing, Jared, if you want to speak to that and you feel like you could wrap it up in 4 minutes, what goes into Once you've bought the license and you got your company and your building and all your other stuff, and now you want to make that product. So then there's submission portals with studios. There's a whole process that you
Yeah.
go through. So do you think you can wrap that up in less than 4 minutes?
Oh yeah, yeah. So we
Because I do it every day. Hell yeah, I got this.
yeah. No, we outline what we want to do. We always have to then submit these items at different stages: concept, sculpt, paint master, etc. And usually these studios, licensing groups, they have these portals that you submit these processes into.
Mhm.
And sometimes they're very easy to work with. Sometimes they're very difficult. Um, I love the easy ones because it's upload, submit, yes, go. Other times they are a labyrinth of clicks and tabs and upload here, don't upload there. Only this version, not that version. So it's a bit of a dance trying to get it to work. But in the end, the licensor is always there to help you through it. They're if I've ever run into a problem, I just give them a call. I'm like,
They're
hey,
not
this
always there to help you through it. Most of them, all our current ones are
95%
there.
of the time.
There
95%.
you go. There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
And then there's some licensors that are just like, hey, just email it to me or text it to me. Like
We
they
love
don't
that.
have a portal, they don't request any of that stuff. So they're like, hey, just send it over and I'll tell you if it's good. It's almost, those are a little bit jarring because you're like, really? That's all I got to do? And they're like, yeah, well, that's fine. I'm like,
Well,
oh,
like
okay.
yeah, like some stuff I was sending you last week, and I'm like, yeah, we're clear. Good. Use this image. Use that. Really?
Yeah,
I don't see it. Oh, it's right
yeah.
here on my phone. I got it. It's all good.
As long,
You
as
know?
long as it's in writing, you're
Yeah.
good.
So I should put out just in the I should say it just in the weird off chance that one of our category managers or somebody's looking at this. We love all of our current relationships. If you have spoken to us anywhere in the last couple months about licensing, we love you. You're great. You guys are
Yes.
great. So that's what I was saying. We have finally got to that point where we've been able to get a little choosy. Where we've been able to say, "Hey, look, we could have this, but it doesn't feel it's are we going to be able to get along here? Are we going to actually be able to do what we need to do?" And like one of our newest relationships that we'll be talking about very soon took a year and a half. It was a year and a half from 1 year and 4 months,
Yeah.
and from meeting at License Expo to sharing the ideas, the line plans, the things we want to do. And we were very honest. Hey, if you guys are going to help us make these, if we can go through this product plan, this is going to be a good fit. And to their credit, turning out to be one of our best relationships. They're wonderful. I mean, everybody we've met is supportive. The product development team is fantastic, and I can't wait till we can talk more about it. But even just like Toho, again, wonderful. Our category manager, even everybody above him, we've met them, we've spoken to them. They're excited about what we want to do. Incredibly supportive, and to the point where, like I said, we'll be going out to Tokyo with their support, and they'll be expecting us and opening up a lot of stuff to us that just hasn't been made available to a Western company before.
Yeah.
Um, and that's flattering. So again, we love all these new relationships. When I'm if it seems like I'm like Billy Idol and a lip up, like about something. It's those are some of a couple of our early relationships were a little more challenging. They were ultimately fine, and we made a lot of good stuff, but growing pains, growing pains. And now we're able to articulate up front, hey, this is what we make, this is what we do, and we're able to send all those samples. That helps. We've made so much stuff now. We can send them a goodie box and say, if you like this, imagine what we'll do with that. And that's ultimately been our best resume, is to be able to send a box of swag to somebody and go, you get it? And yeah, hell yeah, we get it. We want you. And those are the good relationships. So that was a long 45-minute rant on literally everything from answering the question, how do you start a prop replica company, and what happens in between. And in the end, yes, nobody's allergic to money. Everybody wants to make a profit. Of course they do. But it's a long, long road. It's a long and it's the making of the stuff and seeing it actually, that's the reward, is when you actually get the phone call And Amy, you get a lot of those. I get more of it when I'm at shows, but even as a private builder, I stayed a private builder for over 2 decades. And the best stuff in the world is when you get the email. When you get the email that this is exactly what I saw in my mind's eye. This reminds me of when I went to this film with my dad, who's no longer around anymore. This reminds me of that summer at my grandparents or whatever. They anchor that one item. It's no different than when you hear a song on the radio. It's a musical biography, right? It speaks to a part of your life, and that's what these replicas do. No different than, like we've said, it's no different than a baseball card that somebody had to have back in the day that maybe his friend had and he coveted, or a sports jersey signed by your favorite player. That's that tangible thing that makes that otherwise sentimental attachment real. And you can have it on your shelf and you see it when you walk into your office or when you go home. And it's that all these other things, if you can make it happen. Maybe you're a good engineer, maybe you're a good prop maker, maybe you can talk enough shit to get a studio to sell you whatever license you want. And all those things are important, but it helps if you're sincere and honest, and along the way you're conveying that passion for what you do. And like I was saying, yesterday's just a perfect example. I'd had a rough day before. Last week was busy, and I was so happy yesterday just to have the Alexa's playing my list, and the office smells like epoxy and burned rubber, and it's a nightmare in there for anybody else. And I'm at my happiest with how messy it is, and
Stop.
when we can do those things. And oh, sorry,
When you said the word, it triggered
yeah,
it.
sorry, man. And then of course all of us when we're talking throughout the day, hey Amy, how's it going with such and such? Jared, are you on top of this? Hey, I found this out. Hey, look at this cool new thing. Are we going to make it like this? That's when it all comes together and it's perfect. And I don't have to deal with any of Tom's shit in between any of that. He's not calling me, dude, killing me on the oxygen destroyer. We're going to end with this. Like he's. I think the button's made of this. I'm like, I've got months of engineering into this thing. Jared and I have exhausted ourselves on this, and then he's coming along. He just sees an off picture of somebody's replica online, and just just to give me crap. He's like, that's brass, or I think that's copper. I'm click, Anyway, at my happiest when I don't have. I'm gonna put that in there when I have to deal with his nonsense too, but other than that, yeah, there's the proper replica business in a nutshell. And we'll probably have to edit every bit of this because Jared's soul is drained out of his face like 6 different times. But I think we should leave it in, man. It's honest, and if somebody really has a passion for this and they want to know what goes on in the business, I've always said if a camera was over everybody's shoulder throughout the day, it's like Deadliest Catch. There's hazards, there's nonsense, there's funny stuff. It's a very weird ecosphere we operate in. It's not like I don't have anybody local who does what I do that I could go have a beer with and say, "Let me tell you what happened today." Nobody gets it, and you guys got the same thing. If you tell somebody what you do, they're like, "What? You make what?" They don't get it. So again, it's an isolating profession, but you surround yourself with a good team and a good support group, and you have a good relationship with your partners. Passion. That's where you get your happiness from. And then one day, hopefully, you get to make a nickel and a cent. And but that's it. That's all I got. You guys got anything else you want to add?
No.
I talked the whole time. My
We're
mom's
gonna
gonna be
wrap it
so disappointed. My mom's gonna be so upset that uh, that she's gonna call me. And I was watching real quick. I was watching one of these videos the other day, and Amy's saying like, "Hey, hi to Rise, mom." Just so everybody's clear, this isn't a case like I'm not yelling upstairs for the meatloaf. Mom, meatloaf. I want it now. Mom lives 2.5 hours away, guys. It's just making sure because when I was watching one of the videos the other day, I'm like, everybody knows I got a family, right? Everybody knows I actually have a wife and stuff. And I'm like, well, you want it? You want some? I knew you did. I'm not doing that. Mom's a couple hours away, but she watches these. She does, and because at first she had no idea what I did. She knew I made stuff on the side, but she didn't really understand the intricacies of it.
It'd be so
And
funny if she walked in right now with a sandwich behind you.
dude, yeah, completely blew me up. I'm like, eh.
Back
But
when
she lives a few hours away, but yeah, she enjoys watching them. So I like invoking mom every once in a while. She mentioning her. But anyway, that's it. So probably talked way too much, but she will fuss that I didn't let Jared talk more.
Yep.
She'll always say the same thing. She'll Amy's so pretty today, like, and she's never met. Just so everybody knows, she's never met Jared in person or Amy in person or anything. She just feels a bit of a connection through these videos, and she has talked to him on the phone though. When before we've been filming these, I'll
Oh yeah,
stick her on the speaker and she'll tell him stories that embarrass me. But it does speak to it's not when somebody doesn't get what we do, it's not even a naivete. It's just what we do is so foreign to people, right? And if you're a collector and you want a general idea of what gets something to you, how'd you get that cryo can? Well, this is a glimpse of the process. Making it is the easy part. For us. Well, that's the other thing we have as far as team wise. We make everything within. We don't farm that sort of thing out. We've got a lot of pluses being prop makers and collectors. But yeah, there's some hurdles, to clear. Yeah, from the concept to the palette, as we say. But yeah, I ran a little long with everything. But yeah, mom will say you got to let Jared talk more. He's got such a honey voice. I don't know what a honey voice is, but Jared's got one.
I'll take it.
Better than a honey pot.
Good with me.
All right. I would like to say also, William Cat is awesome. And
Yes.
just at the end of this, we're just going to wrap that up. William, if you're watching, give us a shout. We love you. And
William Cat, I hope you're doing well.
your work's the bomb, yo. Love everything you do. Anyway, that's it. I'm done, unless you guys got anything else. Amy, sign us out.
Y'all have a wonderful weekend and be on the lookout for our newsletter.
All right, we'll see you guys. All right, bye.